Right, good morning, welcome back. Now, while I wait for the bodywork to come back from the paint shop, I have the pressing matter to attend to of a broken bolt stump stuck in the frame. Now, if you follow the disassembly video back at the beginning of the project, it was one of these two tiny little 1/4-inch bolts that hold the ECU bracket down to the frame. They were both rusted solid, neither of them wanted to move. One of them with lots of penetrating oil, working it backs and forwards, it came out in the end, but the other one unfortunately gave up the ghost and just snapped off. And this is the mess that was left behind. There it is. All right, now this is a 1/4-inch thick steel bracket that braces across the frame. On top of it is this tin plate that forms the battery crate, holds the fuses and everything else. And on top of that goes this, which is a plastic bracket that holds the ECU in place, all down to these two tiny little threads. Now this one, tiny little thing that it is, as you can see, came out with lots of penetrating oil, lots of patience, backwards and forwards, and eventually I got it out. But this one, despite my best efforts and half an hour with the penetrating oil working it backwards and forwards, unfortunately it gave up the ghost and snapped off. So that leaves me a stump in the frame to be removed, and I thought it would be a handy video to share with you if you've got a similar situation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a broken bolt in a frame, it can be in an engine casing, in a bracket somewhere, anywhere. If you've got a broken stump that you need to remove before you can install a new bolt or screw, then this procedure works for me, and hopefully it might work for you. Now, if I'm going to share methods of how to do this, it's got to start with maybe a way of preventing it actually happening in the first place. I did my level best to get them both out, and I got the starboard one out. I just couldn't get the port side one out because those threads are not captive. There's not a blind hole at the bottom. They're actually open, and the bottom of that thread, that little bolt, hangs out in the atmosphere. Not only that, it hangs out in the path of the mudguard. So there's all kinds of weather getting on the end of those exposed threads, and that's where the problems can start. The end of those bolts that stick down into atmosphere, they get corroded, they fluff up with corrosion, and then you're trying to undo the bolt and drag that thick, crusty corrosion through the thread, and it jams up solid, and that's where they snap off. So there is a preventative way of stopping that happening before you even take the bolt out. How about cleaning them up? Take a little wire brush and some penetrating oil, scrub all that corrosion off the end, get them pristine, and then you shouldn't snap them off in the first place because they should extract in the normal way. But even if, despite your best efforts, it still snaps off, that protruding piece of thread is still useful to you before you reach for the welder or the drill bits. And that is to soak the top of the broken stump in penetrating oil, let it work its magic for a while, and then get underneath there with a pair of grips around the protruding bit of bolt and work it inwards. See if you can wind it downwards and out the bottom. That's worked for me on so many occasions. Now, even though I've got perfect access under here with a pair of mole grips, as you can see, unfortunately there's nothing to grab hold of. When I put my hand on there and feel it, there's nothing sticking down, no protruding bolt to grab hold of. These bolts that I took out, the one that survived, that's only a ½ an inch long. It goes through a 1/4 inch thick steel plate and two other brackets. So at the best, there's barely a millimetre of that sticking down, even when it's done up tight. So that's not going to work, unfortunately, which means for me, it's surgery. Now, one thing you can do is you can weld a new head on it. You put a washer over the stump, you put a nut on top of that, and you fill up the nut with weld, and that connects it to the broken stump and makes a brand new head like it's an original bolt. Now, I've done that a few times myself, and it works quite well when the broken steel bolt is into an aluminium thread. That's fine because the welding on of the head, that heat process, is going to expand the aluminium out of the way and it will let it out. However, if your broken bolt is into a steel thread, remember, steel to steel, the chances are, with the heat build-up involved, you could literally weld that broken stump permanently into its hole forever. So as this is into steel, I can't weld it. There's nothing protruding underneath to grab hold of, which means I've got one remaining option: to drill it out. Right, now with every bolt that breaks off, because it shears off with a twisting motion, it's hardly ever going to break off clean flush. If it has got a little bit protruding out from the bodywork, then you can file it flush, get it absolutely flat. That will really help you with the drill going in nice and central. But if, like mine, it's a standard shear off where it's got a little bit of a slope to it, you can't drill straight into that, because naturally it will push the drill bit down to the lowest point and wander off into the parent metal. It's very important to have a crisp, clear, profound center punch mark right in the middle to guide the drill in, right in the middle. Take some time to line up that center punch right in the middle before you strike it. Right, now with your centre punch mark, just make a very light one to start with, just a pinprick to show where it is. Then have a good look at it close up. Make sure it's dead in the centre. If it is, great, then you're good to go. Put your centre punch back in, give it a good thwack and make a proper mark that's going to guide the drill. Obviously, if it's slightly off, then you can put your centre punch in at an angle and you can actually tap it very slightly sideways and centralise that mark. You can fine tune your centre punch mark if you're really careful, because it is critical to get it bang on in the middle for a good result. There we are, bang on. Right, now as that's a 1/4 inch bolt, that works out 6.3 mil. I'm going to put a 5mm drill bit down the centre of that. But before I reach for a 5mm drill bit, push it in there and hope for the best, I'm going to drill a pilot hole in there first. That's a much smaller hole to guide the bigger one. So a pilot hole would be 2 or 3 mil, and rather than use a 2 or 3 mil drill bit, which is woefully fragile and snap for a pastime, there's a special tool for it. It's called a spot drill. It has a much thicker shank so it won't snap, and with the taper on the end, it will guide the bigger drill in perfectly. Right, now there's a 2mm pilot hole in the middle of the bolt, and I'm now going to pass this 5mm drill bit straight down the centre, and it's a brand new bit straight out the wrapper, so it's razor sharp. And as I've already said, it's a 1/4 inch bolt, which is 6.3 mil or thereabouts. So a 5mm drill bit should clear out everything except the thread around the outside. And if I get it right, I should be able to clear that out with a thread tap. Let's see how we get on. Right, that's cleared out the stump right down the middle. I can see the thread around the outside, and I can clear that out with a thread tap. Boom. There, snap bolt in the frame, easy fix. Probably half an hour of your life in real time. If you own and ride old motorcycles, you're going to come across this at one point or another. And if you've never done this kind of fix, then go and get yourself a tap and die set, some drill bits, a sense of humour and some patience. And you can get yourself out of this kind of drama with no trouble at all. I'll see you next time.